Welcome to Podnutz, a computer repair podcast, episode number 143. I'm Jeff Halash. This is our live call-in show for computer repair techs. We bring you tips and ideas for your IT business. Call-in number is 1-888-697-0162. Let me introduce the co-host. We have Chris Carruthers from the Remote Support Tech team. How you doing, Chris?
I'm hopping this week. How about you?
I'm doing great.
I'm hopping.
It's getting fall in this area, so it's the weather's cooling out a little bit, and I'm enjoying it.
Okay, well, construction season is done here. We're getting into winter already, so.
Oh, yeah, we still have a little bit of construction left. Also joining us today, we have Matt Rainey from Podnutz Pro and InformedIT.net. How you doing, Matt?
I'm doing great. Our winter hasn't come yet. Our winter's like one day. And it's probably sometime in February.
Okay. I'm gonna remind you of that in February. Maybe you get a little bit of snow.
Yeah.
We had a snowflake. Also,
School will be closed. School will be closed if they have that snowflake.
Oh my god. Gotta love those areas. Also to join us today, we have Alex Chamandy from Investment.com. How you doing, Alex?
Doing good. Not quite in winter like some folks, but certainly enjoying the change of seasons that we get. It's been a kind of hot summer here, so
has it? Okay.
Always a welcome change.
Very cool. All right, well, let's go ahead and we'll get started here. Just want to let you guys remind you that Jetpack Live show number 5 is coming up Monday, September 14th at 12 noon Eastern Standard Time. You guys can meet fellow techs and business owners online, learn real ways to grow your IT business. You'll also hear tales from the trenches, learn sales and marketing tips you can actually use, and chat online during the show with other techs. So that's what's going on there. I just want to let everybody know that we are doing this show. I wasn't here last week because I had to work. So this show is not going anywhere. Just want to make people aware that sometimes that does happen on a Sunday, but not too often. So I'm glad to be back and sharing with you guys. And we got a great panel with us today who are going to have a lot of good information, I'm sure. Hopefully more than me. Anyways, Alex, what's been going on in your business lately?
I've been doing a lot of work for clients on websites and networks. One of the big things we did recently was pull a local group of news websites onto using exclusively SSL for all client connectivity, primarily to ensure more secure connectivity to the site, but also to improve privacy. And actually earlier this week, or I guess last week, I got an email from Firefox's chief of security inviting myself and the website owner and a couple other folks out to go celebrate that we're bringing some sites into the more secure foray of SSL only. So that was pretty neat. And then also just been helping out some folks with RAID data recoveries. They can be a little more complex, especially if the client tries to rebuild or check file systems on an already damaged RAID. And in this situation, both were tried, and it definitely caused some issues. And then also been working on upgrading a lot of VPN devices so that they're no longer affected by the SSL logjam vulnerability, which can allow man-in-the-middle attacks and other kinds of ways to interfere with security.
Okay, very cool. Now the SSL stuff, how are you doing that for the particular websites?
Well, it depends on what kind of website the client's running. For static sites, it's pretty simple. You just pretty much slap a certificate in there and enable everything to redirect to SSL. But for dynamic websites that have database-driven content, like a lot of the WordPress websites we've been working with, you've got to go in and actually edit a lot of the content in the database to make sure all the content's being pulled from the secure site. Otherwise, you're going to run into redirect loops and things like that. So, basically a combination of enabling the server, having a certificate for SSL, and then also editing the site content through the database, search and replace to get all the references of HTTP to go over to HTTPS.
Now, is this a paid-for certificate?
Oh, yeah. It's really the best way to go is to have a paid-for certificate for SSL. You can always go around with the free ones or use Cloudflare to kind of run the front end of it. But ultimately, for your site security and your client security, it's a big advantage to have a secure certificate that shows it's from a legitimate certificate authority.
And now, is that really expensive, or has it become cheaper nowadays?
It's not that bad. I mean, it depends on what kind of site you're operating. There are SEO reasons to get SSL on your website. Google, Bing are going to actually rank up your website on that basis. So it may pay for itself, but the average SSL certificate is going to be anywhere between $75 and $250, depending on if you want one for just one website on the lower tier of security or something that encompasses a whole domain with a higher tier of security.
Now, is that for a specific length of time, or is that just because I'm really not sure how. I know we've got to move into this to have that secure connection, but a lot of people look at it as from a cost standpoint and don't want to spend that money.
Sure, and I think largely we'll be motivated as webmasters to spend that money because search engines are really going to stop just having sites benefit from it and really start having them require it as a path to get into being listed. And that's something that you'll probably see in the next 3 to 5 years, especially because browsers like Firefox are making that push. Most certificates are going to have anywhere between 1 and 3 year renewal periods, depending on what you pay for, and usually there'll be some incentive to maximize your period on that, so you can have like a 3-year and get 20% or 30% off.
Okay, great, very cool, very interesting. Yes, definitely something to check into, especially if you're doing websites and for your customers.
And it's interesting also because a lot of folks are sending authentication information or other information to their website insecurely. If you're running a blog or you're running another website where you log in, you're sending your user and password over the internet insecured so that anyone can intercept that information. And other sites that might be engaging in similar mechanisms, there's areas where hackers can exploit that and inject malware into a browser much easier over an unencrypted session than they can over an encrypted one. So there's a lot of security benefits.
That's a good point. Very cool. All right, and Chris, what have you been up to in your business?
Actually, a lot. For me, I've actually been focusing a lot on the back end this week. So a lot of the tech work has been done by Brad. Which, luckily this has actually been a slow week for us. It was perfect for it. Biggest project that I took on, though, is I just renegotiated the contract that we have with Infoscale for the SOS Online Backup. So anybody that's on our newsletter would have gotten a nice announcement a couple of days ago with the new pricing for our larger accounts. And I'm still doing work on Enable. Right now I'm working on the mail service so that we can have reports mailed out to our clients and to their customers. And hopefully we will be able to set up fully branded, unmanaged dashboards for our clients soon as well, so that they can handle their own Enable and save some costs that way too.
All right, very cool. Sounds exciting. Now, as far as your business, are you still getting a lot of virus removals, or are you starting to get? You're doing some hardware there, right? At your shop.
Yeah, but we don't do a lot of it. The last time we had a hardware job was Tuesday or Wednesday. We had a MacBook come in with a disk drive that wasn't working, and we got that fixed up about 4 hours.
Okay.
After it got dropped off. So yeah, we don't do a whole lot of hardware, though. We're not advertising for it. I think that we need a couple more techs in here before I start pushing that too hard.
I understand that. So as far as the remote stuff, still a lot of virus removals. Are you seeing CryptoWall or anything like that?
You know what, we haven't, and I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that whenever we get a virus removal in, we're really pushing the managed service plan.
Okay.
And a lot of we're not doing as many virus removals as we used to, and I think a lot of that has to do with because we're getting people on these plans. Good.
That's good to hear, because yeah, definitely you want to protect your customer, and it's very hard to do that nowadays not only in a monetary fashion, but in something that's not going to take several hours of your day to maintain too. So, but
yeah,
there definitely are ways to do that, and obviously you're a testament to that, because that's what you do day in and day out. So.
Yeah, and you just have to keep improving it, and that's
right.
So that's on my list of things that I've been working on this week, and I'll continue to work on next week. Is improving that Enable service, putting more automation into it, and expanding.
Very cool. All right, and Mr. Rainey, what type of whimsical story do you have for us this week?
It's been a lot of normal day-to-day stuff for us. Abnormal a lot of new orders, like for notebooks and desktops, and had a lot of that this week. A few migrations, email migrations. Those are pretty standard. Domain migration, moving people up to hosted exchange. That's all stuff we do, and that's pretty much what we've been doing this past few weeks. Is normal stuff for us. Prepping for some domain migrations next week. I think we've got 1 or 2 coming up that we'll prep the servers for this week, and we'll start the migrations probably this week. I had an interesting issue with malware bytes, and I wonder if anybody else had this. I had a client who, for some reason, he does his own scans every Sunday. He goes, this is the owner.
Okay.
He'll go into his office and he'll, on every computer, run Malwarebytes, Super Anti-Spyware, CCleaner every Sunday. He does this every Sunday. And I didn't know about this till he called. And in one computer who's logged in as user, let's just say Mary, it was finding, Malwarebytes was reporting finding things on the Z drive in user accounts that the user doesn't have access to.
Oh, that doesn't sound good.
Well, what's funny is they don't have access to that folder. Let's just say Mary is trying to scan John's folder, reporting a lot of stuff in John's folder. If you go to John's folder, those files don't exist.
Okay.
And even if John's folder does exist, she can't. If you click on John's folder, you get access denied. But I go to a server and it says it finds these files. Those files don't exist. That was a strange problem.
Huh. And nobody's figured out what exactly is going on?
Come on now. Of course we did. I don't know why. I don't know why it's happening, but I found some article in the Malwarebytes forum that somebody posted a link to delete the contents of the Windows prefetch folder.
Oh.
Yeah, I could see it being that. Any sort of cached or prefetched content could show up where it didn't exist anymore.
So my only assumption is that while he was logged in as the girl who didn't have access to that folder, at one point that person must have logged into that computer, which would then have granted access to those folders.
Okay.
Now, he was scanning from the girl, but in the prefetch, there may have been some kind of file. So I cleaned that out, and the problems went away.
Now, if he's been running CCleaner, does he not have it ticked off for cleaning those prefetch files?
I don't know what he has checked off.
Okay, all right. I'm just wondering because he's running all that stuff and there's still the remnants left behind.
I don't know why he's running those scans every Sunday, but that's another story. But it was funny that he wouldn't have called us normally. He just couldn't figure out why it was reporting. Because you run a scan, you say to remove it, you run a scan again, they're all there.
Right. Okay.
Because it's not really getting rid of Z:John whatever because it doesn't exist. So every time you run the scan, it finds it 300 infections, and he was freaking out.
Okay.
It was finding all these infections and what's going on. This antivirus isn't working, and no security you'll have in place is working. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, interesting problem. I also came across a problem, and I've heard this before. People liking to put SSD drives in their old computers, right?
Yes.
Okay. I'm gonna give you a tip. Does not do any good to put an SSD drive in your old notebook if your throughput's only 1.5. Why put a 6 gigabit throughput SSD drive when your motherboard doesn't support it?
Because it's supposed to be faster.
But you're limited with the motherboard. It's not going to be faster. It's perception. Some people think, oh, it's an SSD. It's much, much faster because it's an SSD. It's not.
Right.
There's no use putting a 6 gig SSD drive in a 1.5 when it's limited to 1.5.
Personally, I think there is some sort of a placebo effect where you get on there and you go, oh yeah, this works so much better. And the problem I have is a lot of people are actually upgrading people, and I've heard this in different forums and things that people are upgrading people to SSDs in their notebooks and stuff like that. I go, great, as long as you're making sure that you force them to have some sort of backup in place when they have those SSDs. Because here's the thing. If an SSD dies and it has data on it, I'm not getting that data off. I'm having to send it out and spend over $800+ to get somebody to get the data off. If it's a spinning drive, when they start to fail, 90% of the time I can get the data back. And this is without doing anything.
Right.
I mean, Alex is an expert at this because he does data recovery all the time. But from my standpoint, if I just plug in a drive, most of the time I can get the files back from a spinning drive. SSD, I'm done. So a lot of people are, I don't know, they're setting people up for failure, I think, especially if they're not forcing them to have some sort of backup. Hey, we're going to make your computer faster, but...
Yeah, well, these people who have the SSD drives installed and think it's faster, I bet if you just did a reinstall Windows, it'd be faster as well.
True. That's a good point.
The biggest difference is latency. SSDs don't have to go to somewhere on the platter to pull data. So even with a constricted throughput of 1.5, there's going to be lower latency that will allow there to be faster responsiveness. Whether or not it's worthwhile, that it probably isn't.
Yeah.
In terms of
they're
sorry, go
putting
ahead.
SSD drives in 6-year-old notebooks to
Right.
make them last 5 more years. So that's not going to happen.
Well, yeah, the motherboard's going to fail well before that period is up for other reasons. But with data recovery in mind, it really with SSDs it depends. Sometimes there's cost-effective data recovery possible where you're only going to spend $200 to $500 if it's a firmware issue instead of say a controller or memory issue where you actually have to take the whole drive apart. And then also in some of the more modern drives, you've got everything on one chip, and data recovery just becomes almost impossible on some of those monolith systems. There's only now technology starting to come out to deal with that, and your hands are more bound in those situations.
Right.
So yeah, backing up, and backing up is always the best plan.
Yeah, like I said, I'm hoping that people who are selling these SSDs and putting them in some people's computers are saying, listen, we're doing this, your computer's going to work better, but we need to have some sort of backup system. Now, what would you guys say as far as how old would the computer be, or what's too old to not actually upgrade it to an SSD at this point?
Vista.
Yeah, I would cut it off at anything pre-7 and anything that doesn't really have immediate benefits. I mean, if you're upgrading a machine that has, say, a limitation of 4 to 8 gigs of RAM, then SSD is going to make a big difference because it's not going to be swapping out as much. It's going to be doing all that on a much faster drive instead of swapping it out to a slower spinning disk. So that can have immediate tangible benefits. But if you're not constricted by a memory limitation, it can be much more advantageous to upgrade your RAM first and then look at your storage if there's really an issue there.
See, I didn't realize this, but when I had hooked my SSD up to my desktop computer where I had 32 gigs of RAM, for some reason, Windows thought it was a great idea to give me a 32 gig page file.
Yes.
So,
at least.
And I'm like, are you kidding me? So it was eating up my small SSD that I had. Now, just my operating system was on there, but still, from that standpoint, I'm like, wait a minute, why is this thing? It's like eating up everything, and I'm like, why is there 32 gigs of a page file on there? Now I did, I think I left like 4 gigs on there, but I could probably take it down to a gig and it'd be fine. But I was just trying to play it safe. So
and then you've got
a sweet spot.
The hibernation file that'll also take 32 gigs if hibernation's enabled to. You've just eaten 64 gigs, and Windows uses a scaling automatic page file management, so it'll start off at 1-to-1 with your RAM, but it'll go all the way up to 2-to-1, so you could have wound up at some point with a 64 gig page file, 32 gig hibernation file eating up your entire SSD.
Yeah, and I don't know how many people actually know that Windows automatically does that, because I just installed the operating system. I didn't know, so now I know, and it's something I look at for people that I am, because I do replace hard drives with SSDs for some people, and it's but my rule of thumb, I guess, would be probably no more than 3 or 4 years old.
Yeah.
Anything more than that, I'm not going to deal with it. It's just now, you know what? Let's just get you a new machine at this point.
Yeah, that's what I tell them. I'm not going to breathe new life into a dying computer.
Well, that's the other thing too, is you got to assess the health of all the components, because SSDs are not going to be a magical pill that solves all the ails of a laptop.
Right. Yeah. If you're on a Core 2 Duo, it's only going to do so good.
Right.
And somebody brought me an old XP laptop. Asked me why. He brought it because it was slow. Well, of course it's slow.
It's old. All right. So let's see. Wanted to give you guys a heads up on the guys over at Repair Tech Solutions, who make the awesome Tech USB and Tech Waru tool for doing system cleanups, has launched Project Kabuto, and you can check it out at kabuto.io. That's KABUTO.io. And basically what Project Kabuto is a something that you can use in your business, and you can sign up for a free account, and they give you a certain amount of licenses you can use. And basically what it'll do is it'll sit in the system background, and when Windows has a error or a problem, it'll come up with a nice little pop-up and tell your customer, say, hey, this happened in your system. Why don't you go ahead and call your technician so that they can take care of it? Again, it's a more proactive approach to basically, not only keeping you in the front of your customer's mind, but also, helping the customer before they get to a point where everything is so mucked up that, basically they, their computer's so slow or so virus-ridden or, has so many problems or the hard drive's dying. You should be able to see some of the stuff that Windows normally alerts people and people just hit next and ignore, Now it's going to give them a little pop-up that says, hey, why don't you call your technician so you can take a look at this and take care of it, or I guess he or she. So definitely check that out over at kabuto.io. You guys can find more information over there. All right, and let's go ahead and get into some emails, which we have a lot because I'm a little behind. This is from David Cetra. It says, Dear Jeff and the other Podnutz crew, I've been a Podnutz listener ever since discovering your podcast and website when I was going back to college to take some IT courses in 2010. I did get my CompTIA A+ at the end of 2010, and I have taken a full year of CCNA class. I've listened to numerous Podnutz shows since I have learned a lot of interesting and useful information regarding PC repair. I do not have a computer repair business, but I do like helping out family and friends with their PC issues whenever they have them. Now, on to my questions and comments. I like how he formulated this email. It's very, very nice and precise. It's very cool. It says, I have recently worked on a machine heavily infected with malware for a friend of mine. I had the machine for about a week and ran extensive antivirus scans on it as well as cleanup and Windows repair tools. I would estimate that all the scans I ran detected approximately over 10,000 plus threats, either Trojans, adware, spyware, pups, registry key entries, etc. Questions. How many threats, infections, etc. would you think would be enough to just opt for a fresh install? Anybody got an answer to that question before I go on?
I don't know that there's a specific number. I think it really is more about what the infections are doing to the computer.
Okay. How about you, Chris? What would you say to that?
I would have to say that if you can still get into the computer, you don't need to reinstall Windows.
Okay. Matt?
I do mostly work for business support, so it depends on how screwed the machine is.
Okay.
If it's a bunch of cookies, I don't care if it's 3,000. It depends on what it is and how it's affecting the computer and how long it takes me to get it back up. Most of my, like I said, they're business clients. I can wipe a computer, reinstall it, install a few programs in 2 hours. So if the virus infection cleanup takes me for 4 hours, it's not worth it.
Right. And you've got disk images of the systems that, and they're pretty much all the
images,
same, right?
but I can reload Windows in 30 minutes, run a few updates. The data's on the server. Join it back to the domain, install their few business applications and printers, and we're done.
I am going to admit that it is going to be situational. I mean, when I worked in the corporate environment, if we wound up with an infection that came in on, say, just a generic workstation in the accounting department, all the data was stored on the server, so it was easier to wipe and reload and give it back. But I guess it would depend on if it's a residential customer or if this is a business you're working with.
And I'll say from my standpoint, the only times I've had a problem where I've actually had to do a reload in probably the past 5 years is, well, I shouldn't say it, maybe in the past 3 years, is like Windows 8.1. And what I was having a problem with was when people were doing their own upgrades from Windows 8 to 8.1, usually the systems were infected at the time and they were screwed up anyways, and it broke some of the systems inside of Windows. Now, were they systems that people were using, like some of the modern apps and stuff like that? No, probably not. But I can never give a computer back that doesn't have everything fixed. So if something's not working and I see it, I'm going to get to the point where I make sure that it's working. And for some of the things that I ran into, there was no way to fix them. There was just nothing out there at this time. So on those, I opted to do a reinstall. But for the most part, I do a cleanup and yeah, it doesn't take me that long. And quite honestly, I hate doing reinstalls because it's not, for me, it's, even though I've got a fast throughput here, just doing the updates and all that kind of stuff just takes forever. That's really the longest part. With a USB stick, most of the time nowadays, you can actually load a system up in 5 to 10 minutes. But getting all the updates down and making sure that everything is updated and ready to go, that's what takes a while. So I would rather do a cleanup myself because it's a lot quicker. So yeah, but I would say, like these guys said, it's all going to be based on situation. All right, so the second question is, can a system infected with so much malware actually cause certain AV tools not to detect everything on a first or second scan because some of the malware is hiding itself behind other infections?
Yes, absolutely.
Right. He said, I seem to notice that every time I ran another scan with the same tool after using another tool, the first tool was finding newer items. So this is where, not to say anything bad about you, but this is where you have to figure out where these viruses actually are to make sure that you're getting rid of them, because a lot of these viruses will come with sister programs that sit in the background that you don't see. And as soon as you wipe the main antivirus or the main virus off, what it does is it knows and it'll reload it.
Right,
And so
it's
you've got to
persistent.
find the infections. Yep, exactly.
Persistent malware. It'll be memory resident and on the disk at the same time. So you get rid of the item on the disk, and the memory resident item will rewrite it at another point in the disk. So sometimes it can be good when afforded the opportunity to scan outside of Windows. So there's nothing memory resident. You can get rid of all the stuff that you see heuristically and signature-based detections on the disk, and then boot up in a cleaner environment, perhaps into safe mode, and start running at some of your other tools to get a cleaner scan and also a faster resolution to the process. But that being said, if you do have to reinstall with Windows, you can also put all your updates and even some of your basic programs into that image and make it easier for a customer to get back up and running pretty quickly.
Now, okay, so from dealing from a residential standpoint, having an image. So for me nowadays, and maybe I'm wrong in this, but it seems like it takes me just to keep up to actually make an image. It takes so long to do that to me it's just not worth my time to actually make the image with all the updates in it already. Have you found a way that you can do that and it's fairly, fairly automated, or it's very easy to do where you have that image where it's ready to go, or do you have some sort of schedule where you go, hey, I do a system image every once a month or every 4 months, or how do you do that, Alex?
Usually about every month or two at the most, and then at that point, having something like Night to run right after the image is completed. You've got all your most recent updates, maybe a couple more came out the last couple weeks, and then you can install the basic programs that the client might need, and you'll save yourself an hour or two. So that can be worth it if you're really facing, on the wire for a business client, for example, that they need to have this machine up in an hour or two. One way or the other, you got to make that quick judgment. Does it make more sense to try to get whatever off that's on this machine, and will it truly be secure after I have, or is it better to clean, wipe, and reinstall? So it's a situational thing, like we've all said, but there's ways to make the reinstall process less cumbersome as well.
Now, from a business standpoint, I'll say I don't really care, because you know what? If you don't have an extra computer that you can use to do your work, then I'm sorry, but I'll get it back to you when I get it back to you.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. If they have those requirements that they need to back up that quickly, I'm going to recommend that they have replacement computers available to hook up if they need to. Now, for the infections that he said, also, I've seen a lot of infections put stuff in scheduled tasks.
Yep.
I've seen stuff put in different startup folders or in the registry keys for startup. So sometimes you clean up something, you reboot, and one of those things will just put it right back. It'll say at login run this, or something like that. So check those areas too.
Yeah. Yeah, there's certain registry keys that you definitely have to check and make sure that the information hasn't changed, because that's where a lot of them do actually repopulate from.
Yeah, and I've seen scheduled tasks. I've seen 20 different scheduled tasks at user login run this, and of course it's one of those generic 20-character random EXEs or something.
Right.
Or even modifications to network drivers that make the malware appear more legitimate, or audio drivers. I've seen that on occasion, where they'll really burrow in, or modifications to group policy to make sure it re-downloads itself. So they can be tricky, which is why you got to be really thorough when you're doing your removal.
Gotcha. Okay. Very good. Chris, you got anything to add?
I mean, the whole idea for me when it comes to setting up these images, I'm only really going to be doing that in a business environment anyway, and I would personally have a separate image for each client, because they're all going to need something different, and that's just the way that I always ran it. But again, that comes from my corporate background. Right. That's the only place that I've ever used an image, so that's just the mindset that I'm stuck in, and that's something that I'm going to have to learn from, because everybody needs to learn.
And Alex, let me ask you, what types of tools do you use to make an image? And have you found a way that is pretty easy to do that?
Yeah, I'll send you some links for the show links,
okay,
but there's a couple tools and processes that work. There's some that don't work as well, so it's good to start on the right foot. And then it's also important to have, up-to-date ISOs, so that you can, if you're building Windows 7, you don't want to have to build in Service Pack 1 and all that. It's good to start with an image that has Service Pack 1, roll your updates on that, and then have your application installer on that same disk. So there's definitely tools to do it. Some of the process can be automated. Some of the updates can be cached locally on like WSUS. And it's also good to have a USB with an offline updater as well as a side tool, because you might find, hey, I'm removing all these viruses. I don't need to reinstall, but boy, is this computer out of date. And a lot of the times the computers that come in with malware are pretty out of date.
Oh, yes.
So having a little USB with the offline WSUS update tool can help you automate that entire update process instead of having to go out and do it all online and keep rebooting. It can install the updates, it can schedule the reboots, and do it until it's completed all the updates it has. And then when you query Windows Update, you'll have a much more manageable amount of updates to download.
Now, when you're doing a system image, are you using a USB key or are you using a disk or a combination thereof?
I'll put it on both because a computer might come in that doesn't boot off of a disk or a USB properly, or you might, in some situations you might have a netbook with no drive, and in another situation you might have an older computer that can't boot off USB. So I like to have it in all formats handy because the biggest thing is in a crunch you just need your tool to work. So
Right.
to have all the options available to you before that crunch happens is ideal.
Now, let me ask you guys this because this is very interesting. Since we're from Windows 7 on, Windows 7, Windows 8, and Windows 10, Microsoft actually makes the ISOs available. Now, does anybody
Thank
know?
goodness.
Yeah, exactly. But does anybody know how up to date those things are? Are they constantly changing them and making them where they're not just maybe a Windows 7 with Service Pack 1, but they're Windows 7 with Service Pack 1, all the way to, whatever, November of 2014.
Nope.
or something like that.
No, they just-
your service pack.
Yeah, they just release it at the version that you would find in retail. So
Okay.
whatever the most recent version is, that's what you're going to get online. Like with Windows 8.1, you'll still have to update to 8.1.1 and so on and so forth. With Windows 7 out of the box, you're going to have 400 or 500 updates that you have to install.
Gotcha. Okay. Good to know. Because, yeah, I wasn't sure. I know that's where I've been getting a lot of my ISOs is just directly from Microsoft. All right. What other Windows repair tool is out there other than Tweaking.com's Windows All-in-One Repair?
That's Chris's favorite, I've heard.
Yeah, it sure is. I am so excited about Windows All-in-One.
Oh, do tell, Chris. Do tell.
It makes me so happy how awesome that thing is, especially when you have to repair Windows after it's done because it can't go online because the TCP/IP stack has to be redone. And I don't know about you guys, but do you have any idea how hard it is to walk an 80-year-old through opening up command prompt to type in netsh space int space ip space reset log.txt, and they don't understand what the letters are that you're telling them because phonetics don't make sense to people?
So, Chris,
been there.
this is why. Yep, Chris, this is why. Thank God for people like you because it's exactly why I don't do a lot of remote support.
There you go. Now, to be fair, ADW Cleaner for about the span of 2 months caused the exact same problems.
Ouch.
And
Yep, I remember. Yep.
What was the other thing that it did? I'll think of it. But there was actually two individual command line repairs. One of them was the TCP/IP stack reset. And then there was another one, and you had to run both of them after running ADW Cleaner because it corrupted something. And anyway, so a lot of these automated tools I get super nervous about until we test it. And I will test it using the front desk machine from my desk because that's the only way that I'm going to know for sure that everything is working on a remote. And my secretary hates it when she comes in and her computer doesn't work because I've been playing with it. But, that's just how it goes. So if you can avoid all-encompassing repair tools like that, avoid them.
Yeah.
Use individual scripts for things that you can follow. Because I'm not going to say do everything by hand. I don't do everything by hand. I'm working on too many systems at once, and it's just not feasible. But like we use instant house calls, so we have the built-in D7. I won't use the Windows All-in-One Repair tool, but I'll use probably 12 scripts at a time and have them execute one by one, so that I know that everything that I want done is done without needing to do it by hand.
Yeah.
I was going to say, as far as, I use a D7 too, and actually the Windows, Repair All-in-One tool is my last resort. If there's something that I cannot get working for some reason and I cannot find out where it's at, then I'll run it. And, going back to the days of Combo Fix, now my understanding is, and I didn't realize this, but a lot of people actually use Combo Fix for virus removal. I never have. I use Combo Fix in a way that I'd already had the machine clean, and there was some things in Windows that this was way back a long time ago. Some things in Windows was broken. I would use Combo Fix. It would fix the last couple things I needed, and then I moved on with my day. So I've never had it mess up a system. Where people that are using that for virus removal, yeah, you get what you deserve. That's all I can say.
WinSock, by the way, I just thought of it. WinSock was the other thing that ADW Cleaner was breaking.
Yep. Very good. Matt, how about you?
I like all-in-one repair. I do like that.
Yeah, you would.
I would say that, if it's used responsibly, it's not that bad. You don't want to check off every single thing and just run it and be like, oh, we're hoping for the best. But if you know what you're trying to do, and you check only those boxes, and it's a very limited amount of features you're adjusting, you can predict what might go wrong, but hopefully it doesn't, and whatever's going wrong is fixed. And I think that's an important thing. Some of the all-encompassing stuff, if you can go granular, can be helpful.
Absolutely. Yeah. Actually, look at what you're trying to actually accomplish, instead of throwing a bunch of mud at the wall and hoping something sticks.
Just going to bring up what's going up in the chat here. The question that Mason was asking is, do you not find that all tweaking software tools are the being of a lazy tech when you can do them all yourself? And personally, I don't know about you guys, I don't think it's a lazy person that uses these automation tools. I think that it's, as long as you have the knowledge in the first place that you could do it by hand, and you understand how to fix it if something goes wrong, it's not a lazy tech, it's a tech that's trying to condense the work so that you're making a higher revenue per minute.
Yeah, it's about productivity.
Yeah. Now, exactly. It's not a replacement for knowledge. If you are downloading a tool to do something because you don't understand what's wrong, and you figure that, the all-in-one tool will fix it. That
famous last words.
Right? So, if you are in a position where you don't understand what the problem is, and you don't understand how you would fix it by hand, you should not be using a tool to fix it. You should be fixing it yourself, doing the research, or finding somebody like a mentor or somebody that knows what it is, and figure it out that way. If you're just shotgunning your troubleshooting by running a bunch of tools that you don't know what's going on, I don't even care if I'm offending anybody when I say this, you're not a tech. You're a script kiddie. And you need to take a step back and learn what it is that you're doing, because you are going to wind up in a position where you are going to cause damage by using these tools and not know how to fix it. And, pro tip, running the tool a second time isn't going to fix it.
Chris, you just offended about 90% of the people in this industry. I just want to let you know.
You know what? And I'm okay with it, because I will tell 90% of the people in the industry, go and educate yourself.
Yeah.
You don't have to go to school. I'm not saying everybody has to have a college education to do what we're doing. What I'm saying is that you need to understand what you're doing. So if you come across something new, don't just throw D7 at it or whatever toolkit that you have. Research the problem so that you can understand, fix it at least once by hand. And if you can do that, then use your tools, because you know what tool to use and what to do if it doesn't work.
Yeah, that's a really important point, because there is too much emphasis on automating in lieu of knowing what you're automating, instead of automating because you know exactly how to fix the problem at scale. And those are two completely different concepts, and it's good that Chris made a point of that.
Yeah, and I'll say, so if somebody uses either the TechWaru or the D7 tools, you can basically set those. So I have mine set up to run just the things that I need it to run. And it's very, very minimal, to be honest with you. It's the things I run to get the system back up and running, cleaning temp files and all that kind of stuff. All that stuff's automated. Yes, could I go do that stuff separately? Yes, I could. But there's really no point when a lot of the tools are already actually built into Windows or into third-party tools that are going to do some of that stuff. So from that standpoint, I'm going to use a tool that's going to, I'm not going to have to sit there and push buttons for an hour. I'm just going to let the tool run and come back and finish up. But what it basically comes down to is being a troubleshooter. You have to be a troubleshooter in this business. We've talked about this before. If you don't know how to troubleshoot, you're going to have a hard time. It's not that you can't learn, but you are going to have a hard time. If you've got to be able to figure out the problems. And let's face it. I mean, even things like Google is our best friend, right? If we can't figure something out ourselves, we can go and look at somebody else who has figured it out and say, oh, yeah. And you know what? Here's what I find in Google nowadays. Back in the day, probably, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years ago, you would go to Google and you could actually find a solution to your problem. Here's what I find nowadays. There's so much crud that's on the internet that I can't, most of the time I will not find a solution to my problem. But you know what it'll do? It'll jog something in my brain, point me in the right direction, and then I go, oh yeah, let me go try this. Mm-hmm. And what I'll end up doing is fixing the problem because I was guided in a direction, but I'm not getting the all-in-one fix where it goes, hey, just do this and it'll work, because 9 times out of 10, Those don't work anymore.
Jeff, the Microsoft Fix-It tools aren't working for you?
Oh my God. Does anybody use? Actually, I do use those every once in a while. Every once in a while.
I use it once in a while too.
Yeah,
I mean, there's one I know how to go into the registry and disable IPv6, but sometimes it's just quicker to run the Fix-It tool to disable IPv6.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just like before, Fab's auto backup. I used to go in there and edit the registry and edit the profile permissions to be able to move profiles from domain to domain or domain to local. Or
okay.
Domain.
Right.
I used to go do that manually. But if there's a tool now that does it automatically, well, it's quicker for me.
Exactly. I used to do all my backups for people was manually. I mean, it was manually dragging and dropping from one drive to another. I mean, and it's like, in full disclosure, here's what I used to do. I used to use Fabs back in the day, and I still use it today. I used to run Fabs, and then I would also do a manual backup because I was afraid that Fabs was going to miss something. Nowadays, I'm so comfortable with how Fabs works that I'm just like, it just works. So I'm not really concerned. All right. So he says after that, I think we've Matt, did you say you had another? Oh, you said you like tweaking. You like the all-in-one tool.
So what we're kind of telling him, though, is that there isn't a specific tool. There's a process.
Right.
Yeah.
Good point. Yeah, that's a good way to put it, Alex. Very good. All right. He says, here's a list of most of the programs.
One more thing, sorry. Yeah, so
Go ahead.
troubleshoot, like you said, troubleshooting. Troubleshooting isn't, I've troubleshooted the problem. We didn't run this tool yet. That's not troubleshooting, right?
Oh, God.
Find out what is causing the problem, and either fix it or know what tool will fix it.
Right.
So, yeah, that goes back to that. The troubleshooting is not, I haven't run on my automated tools yet.
Right.
No. And really, and I love this because I'll get, somebody who's calling us up and they want to set up a brand new white label account because they've got all this work coming in. Hey, fantastic, that's great. And then they start talking to us, and the first thing they do when someone brings their computer in is they pop in whatever, like D7 or whatever it is that they use, and they click run auto, and then they come back to their computer, restart it, and see if the problem's been fixed. Like, do you even know what you just did for your customer? And that's what I would like to see avoided, especially since we have a hard enough time now justifying charging people for service. So if you don't really understand what it is that you're doing to help your customer, how can you justify the bill?
Yeah, that's a very good point. You have to know what you've actually done to fix it. And then also you have to know that so that if the customer comes back and says, hey, I have the same problem, what are you going to do? Just run the tool blindly and hope for the best again?
Yeah. Yeah, or try to explain to them why you can't fix it the second time.
Right.
When it doesn't work.
My tool's not working again.
Yeah, my automated tool.
You know what? Clearly you need a new computer because this didn't fix it.
Yeah.
And here's another thing too. If you come across a fix and you actually find something that works on a specific problem, because I always get these weird one-off problems that nobody knows how to fix it. I come in, I fix the problem, whatever. What I do is I use OneNote, and I take a note and I put it in a notepad or OneNote, and I'll have the fix there. So if I do run into the problem again, or I'll have people who go, hey, have you ever ran into this? And I can't remember everything. So I go back to my notepad and I go, yeah, here's the fix, and I copy and paste it to them and do that. And a lot of times that'll help you in your process. It's something you learn along the way, and I think there's a lot of people that do that same type of thing, because I get things from people that say, hey, yeah, I ran into that 2 weeks ago. Here's a fix for that, and people will help you out, especially in this community. So
I was actually thinking about taking that concept and broadening it a bit, and I've been working on this in-house, but I'd like to actually make it a community effort, and that is to say, have a public knowledge base where tech professionals can find this knowledge and not only get new knowledge, but contribute their own knowledge, and then have it just vetted by a team of volunteers. I'd be more than willing to host a website, create the architecture to facilitate everything. I would just need some contribution from the community who, are regularly running into problems, and if they're like us and they're troubleshooters, they're finding their own ways to resolve these problems, or at least reliable ways to properly resolve the problems.
Exactly. No, that'd be great. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely keep that in mind. All right, so he says, here's a list of programs, tools I used on this system. All are the free versions, but I sort of like them. So if the paid versions might have more functionality, I might consider purchasing some in the future. TDSS Killer, AVG Rescue Disk, Kaspersky Rescue Disk, Junkware Removal Tool, Malwarebytes, Hitman Pro, Avast Free Antivirus. Each of these seem to detect different infections. Okay, out of that whole list, I run 2 of those. But that's just me. Each of these seem to detect different infections. Okay, and then he goes on, CCleaner, Glary Soft Utilities, Wise Registry Cleaner, which I've heard people talk about. I've never used it, and CCleaner. Oh, I'm sorry, he has CCleaner twice. Never mind. So CCleaner, Glary Soft Utilities, and Wise Registry Cleaner. And then the Windows All-in-One Repair from tweaking.com. I also ran CheckDisk and SFC/Scan Now as recommended with the Windows All-in-One Repair.
I would say there's some redundancies in there, but other than that, it seems like a pretty good kit. I used to use GlarySoft way back in the day, but now they just want to stuff adware in everywhere they can. If you update it or if you run it, they're putting in more advertisements and things like that. So that's become a little problematic. But CCleaner is great, and most of the tools listed there, if used properly, can be very helpful.
Now, as far as CCleaner, I only use the portable version. I will not use CCleaner because they want to put that silly monitoring tool on, in your taskbar now.
That's a little disappointing that all the programs think they're important enough to just start up with your computer every time it starts.
But here's the thing. Okay, part of me understands, why they want that recognition there all the time, because let's face it, a lot of us have been using CCleaner for years. We don't pay for any licenses. It's a free tool. So I can't really blame the guys for, trying a different, way to keep themselves in front of the customer. So maybe, maybe down the road the customer will buy it or whatever. I'm not sure what their end game is, but it kind of makes sense to me. So, what is the Glare Soft Utilities anyways? What does that do? I've never used that one before.
It was a multi-purpose tool pack for cleaning up your computer and optimizing it, doing that kind of stuff.
Okay.
But as the years went on, more and more kind of ad-driven stuff crept into it. So then it would replace your search engine. It would want to add a toolbar. When it updated, it'd want to turn it into nagware. So I backed off of it because customers were saying, why is this program adding all this? And I'm like, well, I don't know. Let's fix that. But, yeah. Just kind of from one tech to another, I would probably phase out the GlarySoft.
Oh, I guess I didn't read this properly. The reason he used Wise Registry Cleaner was seem to find more registry key issues after already checked with CCleaner. Is cleaning the registry going to make your computer run better?
Yes.
Marginally. The difference between what you're going to gain from CCleaner and then after that running another tool is very, very small.
Yeah.
I would say the more important things would be your temp files, your internet temp files and things like that might be clogging the system up a little bit when you go to load your browser and different things like that.
The biggest thing really to me ends up being startups and services. There's so many programs like CCleaner that they want to be important. They want to show up a little splash screen on your computer and be there resident in the system tray. And if folks have been downloading those free programs for a couple of years, you might have a taskbar and a MS config full of 10, 15, or 20 of them, and each one wants to load sequentially at startup. So that adds a big delay.
Yeah, and I do have to say though with the question of the registry scan, I use the CCleaner registry scan. Now I review the registry the keys that it wants to change first, because remember that whole rant that I just went off on about understanding what you're doing before you do it. But I do find that
you gotta be smart enough to find it. Yeah, who cares?
Yeah, but I'm not going to go look for it manually though. But if you have enough orphan registry keys, and a lot of them have to do with startup keys that just don't point to anything anymore, right? If you get enough of those, then yeah, it does bog down the system. So far, I have only had 3 or 4 times in the last year where the CCleaner registry scan found a key that I didn't want it to delete. So there is a lot there. But it doesn't make as big of a difference as everything else that you do in your tune-up, for sure.
Well, if you're running any of these automated tools, I mean, obviously the first thing that is running in my tool set is going to be a registry backup.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So that I can go back to that. You
should be doing a registry backup, a system restore point, and if possible, if it's something that's in your shop, clone the drive before you do any of this type of work, honestly. But we don't have that option because we're remote. So yeah, we do the registry backup and the system restore point, and that's enough for us.
Chris, I'm just lazy. I don't want to pull every drive out and actually clone the stupid thing.
Yeah, I don't do that either.
I'm just saying.
But do we want to talk about what we actually do in our shops or best practice?
That's true. Yes, don't do what I do. Do what I say.
Right, there you go.
Yep.
You know, and one utility I use, you also said you use CCleaner to see what's in startup. That Nearsoft utility, it's called like what's in startup or what's in startup. That Nearsoft utility will show you everything and every register key that starts up, any services.
Yes.
I use that to see what's starting up. And if I don't want it, I'll go take care of it. But
Right.
it doesn't delete anything. It just shows you what's in startup.
Malwarebytes Startup Lite was pretty good for us, and there's another tool that my tech just started using that I can't remember the name of it right now, but it just pulls up the registry and highlights things that you should look at.
Okay.
And when I find out from him what that tool is, I'll give you the link for that, Jeff. We haven't implemented it into our official process yet, but it may be going in.
Okay. He said something else he found interesting was that some of the programs above did not actually remove infections or registry keys. He said he also needed to go in manually and delete entries using regedit and using its search feature. So yeah, you'll find that depending on the tools you're using, sometimes they will leave remnants, and sometimes they're just empty folders and different things like that. You know, you can go through, and there are times when I'm having a problem where something is trying to start up because there was a remnant left behind, even though there's nothing really running, but it'll still come up with a stupid pop-up, and you've got to go in and remove some of those features. So that's what I do. I go in regedit and use the search feature and get rid of all the file folders and any of the remnant files left over. It doesn't happen a whole lot, but it does happen sometimes.
My tech can hear me. It's auto runs, and I just put a link up in the chat.
Oh yeah,
I've used that before too. Yeah.
I actually auto runs is in my toolkit. I love auto runs because it's actually one of the first things I actually look at to see what is starting up, what is getting killed, and if I go to kill something in auto runs, if it pops back up automatically, I need to figure out whether if it's a Windows file that's supposed to be doing that, or if it's something that's not legitimate that's kind of repopulating itself after I kill it. And that's a great, easy way to find out if you have infections that are popping up on you.
Yeah.
Okay. He said, I'm not totally confident that I removed everything, but after a few days, the system was functioning way better than it was when I received it. I still think there probably still are some leftover entries or some corruption errors, but it seems to run pretty good. Thanks for taking the time to read this, and if you know what show you may read this on, I would love to know so that I could listen to it. Thanks so much, Podnutz listener David C. from Springfield, Pennsylvania.
So one thing for David to consider if he's not sure if a machine is fully repaired is to run that SFC scan or to run the DISM Restore Health tool in Windows 8 and above, and that can look for any inconsistencies in your system files and repair them. And if you can't repair them, that can be an issue where either the malware is still present and modifying items, or the operating system is corrupted and might need some kind of repair. So that can be a good kind of heuristic as to where the system is after you've run your tools.
Very good. All right. Excellent. Well, okay, we spent most of the show on that one email. But no, it was a great email, and and I like getting everybody's different perspectives on this panel about what they do, best practices, and different things that can help the listeners out. So, the second email, this is from John Hance. It says, hey Jeff, I wanted to get your opinion on a USB 3.0 dual hard drive dock to use for hard drive cloning. Here's my situation. My work machine is a Haswell-based Think server that doesn't support hot swap SATA. Yeah, I've got my bench machine doesn't either. It sucks. So every time I connect a hard drive, I have to reboot to see the drive. That's a huge annoyance. I frequently clone hard drives to SSDs using Acronis TrueImage 2015, and that works very well. So I need a good way to connect two drives via USB 3.0 without requiring me to reboot every time. My Think server acts as a print server and hosts some files what we use daily, so I really, 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 really don't want to reboot more often than I have to. Got it. Okay, I found this Sabrent dual SATA dock on Amazon that looks good, and I'll put a link to that in the show notes. It says I prefer to buy Anchor products, but they don't make a 2-bay SATA dock yet. I really want something that is well constructed and reliable. I don't care what the price is, within reason. What do you guys use? Since I use Acronis, I don't care if I can clone outside of Windows. Just need a reliable USB 3.0 SATA dock that supports 2.5 and 3.5 drives. Any input would be much appreciated. Thanks so much for your time, and hope you can ask a question on the show this week. John Hance, Computer Pros, Greenville, Tennessee. Thanks for the email, John. And I will tell you that I sent him an email back, and I used the I can't remember the name of it. I will put a link to it in the show notes. And I think we've done it before. It's the one of the StarTech ones. I think it was right around $60 or something. I will tell you, as far as construction, and Marvin might be able to pipe in on this one since he uses a little bit higher end one. As far as the construction on anything under $100, they're all pretty much junk. They're plastic, and they are what they are. But most of them work perfectly fine for either doing cloning outside the system or using something like Acronis, where you can clone from one drive to the other. What do you guys use?
For inconsequential cloning, that is to say, I know the source disk is in pristine condition. I'll use one of the StarTech docks that can clone just on a function on the dock itself.
Yep.
That ends up being pretty straightforward and pretty easy. Haven't had any complications going from spinning disk to spinning disk or spinning disk to SSD. And then also they have the eSATA port, so if you want to interface with the finished product, you can make sure everything's working from your computer.
Now, I will tell you, now that you said that, there are some times where some of these docks, when they're doing cloning outside of like Acronis or something like that, that you cannot take a bigger drive and put it onto a smaller drive.
Right, right.
So now there are some products that actually will let you do that, but I don't know of any of them. Like my StarTech one will not. I can't go from a big drive to a smaller drive using the outside the Windows function. So
it just doesn't know how to do it. The
Right.
disk geometry ends up being an issue. It has no way to visualize partitions because it doesn't have that level of firmware. So it's just going from byte to byte. And if it sees too many bytes on the source and too few on the destination, it's going to throw its hands in the air and say, I don't know what to do.
Right.
So yeah, there are some models that'll clone actual partitions. They'll look at the data in a logical sense and be able to clone a partition from drive A to drive B, even if drive B is smaller than drive A, assuming the partition will fit.
Now, I will tell you that I had a customer who ran into this problem. I had to fix the problem for her. Was that she had cloned her own drive, and even when I cloned it, even when I did it, it would I went to put a small drive onto a bigger drive, and it put that partition on there. Well, you've got to be able to open up the rest of that partition, which is fine, except if you have in between that you have the recovery partition, which is outside of or is in between the open space on the hard drive and the actual partition that has the operating system on it. A lot of disk management tools will not work. I've got one. I was using the AEMOE or AEMOI or something like that, and I'll have a link to that in the show notes. But I was using that tool, and that was able to move it around the recovery partition. And then I've got another one that John Dubinsky shared with me, and it's I don't know what the name of it is. It was a file folder that said disk management, and it works flawlessly too. I was able to move the partitions around any way I want, and it did it no problem. So that's one of the things you have to look for when you're doing those.
Yeah, if you're doing it on a logical level, there's tools like CloneZilla that you can use that are completely free projects that will allow you to do logical clones and byte-for-byte clones. And then there's also partition management tools like EASUS, which is a free partition management tool where you can shrink or change the IDs of partition or change which partition is active. Generally, when you have those situations where you have like a recovery partition ahead of the operating system, if your client doesn't need that recovery partition, you can just get rid of it and set the active partition to being the operating system and then clone it and save them some space on what will be a smaller drive anyway.
Right. Yeah. So ESUS would not do that as far as it wouldn't open that partition or let me add it to the operating system partition. So that's why I had to find a different tool. I forgot about CloneZilla. I haven't used that in a long time. So that's a good tip there.
There's also a lot of good tools on the Ultimate Boot CD. I think it's out version 5.0.3 by now, but there's a whole section of tools for partition management and cloning and data recovery built
none
into
of those
that.
worked either.
Really?
No.
Was it a GPT partition?
No, it wasn't. Yeah, that's what I said because I've been able to use those tools before, and I just could not get it to work. So. Anyways, you're gonna come on those things every once in a while. Oh, and here we have Marvin Bee from mbsystems.net. Marvin, how you doing?
Hey guys.
Hey.
So I heard my name, I came out running.
What was the name of your dock you use?
Well, I do have a StarTech, just so you know that. But the one that I think you're referring to that I got was the 6-bay from Dycon, D-Y-C-O-N-N.
Okay.
And the Dycon, they do have a dual bay as well. It is 3.0, and it comes with the software that will allow you to do the duplicating from a larger size disk to a smaller disk. It'll also do some nice DoD wipes and all of that stuff. So that's the one that that I was thinking you were referring to.
Yep.
But you had made the comment about all the dual bay docks. If they're under $100, they're pretty much all the same.
Right.
And
I believe so, anyways.
That is pretty much true. But if you want to get the really good stuff, you're going to spend the money, and you're going to spend it from, companies like Kangaroo, Alaritech, where you're going to, pay more for those features. And the Dicon is in that range, where the 6-bay dock is like $399. But it does everything you need. And I did hear Alex talking about some of the software, the ESUS. I do have that for partition management. I have a couple of them that will do all the partition sizing, moving partitions. You can clone and copy the partitions. It's just a little cumbersome if you don't have another system to attach the drive to. So the docks have come in handy. Right.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, send me a link for that Dicon if you could, and we'll add it to the show notes because that'll be really good. And to be honest with you, $399 is really not that expensive.
No, it's not.
As, and explain what you were using the 6-bay for, because you were using it for a specific purpose. It was helping you, manage your business.
Well, the reason I got the 6-bay is because at the time I was setting up multiple systems. I had 2 jobs where I was setting up more than 10 systems over a weekend. And so what I did was I basically got the first system, Windows installed, all the updates installed, all of my, 9-ite programs installed, and got that partition where I wanted it, and then I cloned that to 5 drives at a time, and it took less than an hour to clone 5 drives.
Oh,
so
nice.
Basically Friday I had all the systems ready, so when I went on site Saturday, all we had to do was hook them up, get the customer software installed, connect to the domain, and we were good to go. So we did all of that Friday night and Saturday.
Nice. Saves a lot of time. All right, cool.
A lot of time.
And Matt, what do you guys use? Do you guys use any cloning software or do any of that type of stuff?
I have a StarTech dock as well.
Okay.
And for sometimes we have, I think we use I'm not sure what the name of the software is. One of my techs has a software-based imaging that we use if the duplicator does not work.
Okay.
But I want to say it's something from the boot CD.
Okay. The ultimate boot CD?
Either that one or the H one.
Okay. Hirons. Oh, yeah. Okay. Very cool. Chris, what do you use remotely for duplicating drives?
Nothing. But
you walk the client through it, right?
Yeah. Okay. That's gonna happen. It's not like I haven't. It's not something that I will do because we're about to do something on the computer. We've had people who have requested that we set them up with an image-based backup, and we're happy to do that through whatever tool it is that they want to purchase. Now, that said, oh, geez, I don't know how much I can say about this. We might have a solution for that at some point soon. But in the meantime, though, we'll just help customers configure what they've already bought.
Okay.
Now, in shop, though, we have a two-drive toaster with a button, and you just pop button and copies everything over.
There you go. And I have been able to use that on some drives that are just starting to fail, not horrible. And I've already done a backup. I've already pulled the data off. But sometimes to make it a little easier, I will try to clone that bad drive to a brand new drive and then just reinstall the operating system using recovery image on the actual whatever HP Dell or whatever it is.
Yeah, and it's not like we haven't had failures on that. We did have a client who brought their computer in. The hard drive was failing miserably. System still booted up, but pretty much every service couldn't run because of a different reason. So we did the image onto a new drive, put the new drive into the system, and tried to use the just the Windows 8 restore function, and it couldn't read the that partition. Not because of anything wrong with the way that it copied, but because the partition was unreadable on the first disk.
And that does happen, yeah.
Yeah, so it's not like it's a fail-safe, a foolproof solution for replacing a drive, but it's It's a
It's
lot
a shot
better
in the
than
dark, to be honest with you. That's what I use it for.
Exactly, yeah. It's like, well, there's a good chance that this is going to work, and it's not really going to take a whole lot of manpower to try.
Right.
So it was worth the effort, and when it didn't work, that's fine. We just, reinstalled Windows using the disk and put the data on manually, and there you go. It was worth a shot.
Right. Excellent. All right, so Marvin, this one's going to be for you. This is from James Parker, and he says, Jeff, after listening to the Computer Repair Show number 141, CompTIA ChannelCon 2015 review, I would like some guidance for starting out. Background, the title of his, in the subject line of the email, it says, do not want to be the man in the van.
Oh, wait, hang on.
He's got to go put a sign up.
Oh, no.
You didn't give him time to prepare for this.
Yeah, I know. It's like, wait a minute, where's my man in the van? I don't even have that picture anymore. All right.
Sorry,
There we
guys.
go. Got the good background in
Got
place.
the man in the van. There we go. Let me click on it. Oh, yes. All right, there we go. All right, so he says, background, older gentleman, 39, married with children, 7, and like you, work at an automotive factory. I'm sorry. I would like to start repairing on the side. I have a BS in IT. Yeah, me too. Focus networking, but only have classroom experience and no real world. I've tried several times over the years to get an IT job, but cannot support my family on the starting pay. As my family has grown, my interest in IT has been put on the back burner. Question. I am insecure about my knowledge. Where can I go to get up to speed on break fix? The man in the van. Could you go into more detail on how the repairs are done? Or do I just need to listen to earlier specific shows? What procedures do you follow now compared to when you started repairing? And he puts a praise. He says, really like listening to the show on my commute to work home. One way is 45 minutes. Thanks, James. James, thank you for that email. And yeah, it's, as far as getting knowledge on the, to get up to speed on break fix, what would you guys give him as advice?
That site we talked about building?
Find a computer, break it, and try to fix it again.
Exactly. I think you're right. You know what? Most of us have started off where we fixed like our own computers, right? That's where I started, fixing my own. And then I started fixing family and friends because they didn't want to mess with them. And then what I started to do is I really found a passion and said, I really like this. So I think I can make some money in it. So now I'm going to go and start a business, and I'm going to start fixing other people's computers. And let me tell you, did I always know the fix before I fixed a customer's computer? No, absolutely not. My first power jack repair was actually on a customer's computer. I'd never soldered in my entire life.
Jeff.
Or desoldered or anything. So, no, that's not true. But I had very limited knowledge. I watched a video and said, I think I can do that.
And that's how most of our users bring their computers to us.
Yes. So, but you know what? Actually, that power jack repair went flawlessly. It only took me 6 hours to do, and the customer got it back. They were more than happy, and I think I made like $69 on that whole deal there. So that was a long time ago.
And a happy customer.
Exactly. Now I can do that fix in less than 15 minutes, and most of the time you don't even have to solder anymore. You have a little power jack with a pigtail set of wires on there that you plug into the motherboard. So
Thank goodness for that, too.
yes. Fairly easier, so and those still go bad.
Oh, they do, but at least there's a more straightforward and durable fix for them because you can put them back in with a brand new one, and then you can epoxy that sucker in there, and it's not going anywhere.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah. Is there? I mean, other than that, is there really any way? I told him, I said, you have more knowledge than what you probably know because you're probably doing this stuff for your family and friends already, anyways.
Here's one thing I'm going to remember from way back when I started. I had actually worked in a computer repair shop for a couple of years before I ventured out on my own. And one of the things that I did was I found a local seminar that was coming through, and I forget, it was one of those little packets, Global Knowledge or something, that was listing all the things you can learn about computers, and one of them was computer repair. And I remember it was $495. And I went and took it. It was a one-day Saturday, and basically they were going to show us how to build a computer, break it, put it back together. And I went there, did that, and at the end of the session, we were able to keep the computer. So that was one of the reasons I wanted to do it. I'm like, oh, I'll pay $4.95 for a computer, and I'll see if I can learn anything. And to be honest, didn't learn jack that I didn't already know. So
Right.
for the most part, when it comes to computer repair, you are going to be able to have some resources out there. You'll, get the certifications. You'll find little classes. I think really the best things to do are find those after hours high school teaching classes where you can go in for really cheap, $20 or whatever, and you'll learn more if you really truly don't know anything. Other than that, find computers. Doesn't matter where you find them. eBay, garbage, friends, break them, put them back together, and Google is sometimes your friend.
Yep.
And another thing, Marvin, you said that's a really good point is you were somewhere else and you were kind of getting your bearings there before you started your own shop. I'd encourage this person to intern or try to get a job, maybe part-time, doing some repair to get some hands-on experience so that they can really build their knowledge base.
That is a good idea too, because before I even got to work at that repair shop, one of the things that I did, now I don't know if shops do this now, but the shop that I worked at, they actually specialized in used computers. So they bought computers off the street all the time. And so the way that I got into it was I would bring him used computers every Saturday to sell. And he got to the point he's like, look, you're building computers better than my techs. Why don't you come work for me? And it started out, I couldn't leave my job that I was at, but I did start by working every Saturday at that place until it worked out that I ended up going there full time. So yeah, if you can get into a shop or get into a place, maybe intern, work part-time, that's a good way to start.
Yeah, I remember when I actually started, this was years ago, my company actually paid for us to be able to take classes. So I took a computer building class. And I remember, putting the computer together was no big deal. But I think if you paid another $600, you could take the computer home, which I didn't do because even back then when I looked at the parts, I'm like, I could probably do better. So I remember going to install the operating system. This is back when you had to, insert a floppy disk to get the driver in there and, and get the operating.
You're aging yourself, Jeff.
Yeah, I'm old. But when I was doing that, I remember I would ask the teacher, I'm like going, so how do you do this? And he'd come over and just type in a command and it would go. And I'm like, so I learned absolutely nothing at that class. And this was like $1,000 class. And so a lot of times the things you're going to learn are just things that you just do on a regular basis for yourself or for, like I said, friends and family.
And if you're interested in computers, it won't be a chore to get some broken computers and start messing around to figure out what's wrong with them. You'll enjoy it. You'll figure out new things. A bunch of synapses will start firing, and you'll start putting these connections together. Well, if it's beeping, maybe it is the RAM that I need to replace. And I think that if it's something you really want to do, you'll be drawn into it. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I mean there are specialty classes too. If there's something that you're falling behind on or feel that you just want to have more information on, like I know there's the virus doctor. He does his class. I'm going to be taking that just to check it out and see what's going on there. So I'll be able to actually give a much better report on that after I take it. But from the sounds of what I've been told so far, it's been a great class for the people who have been involved.
Yeah, I took that course and I'm much better off. I'm a much better off tech for it. Even if I never learned anything from the class, which I actually learned a lot, but I would still be a better tech for the knowledge and the way of thinking. That and I was my thinking was already kind of the same way anyways, but now it's even more where I'm just like I don't, like I said, out of all these tools that people have run, there's maybe a couple tools that I actually run out of there. The rest is done manually or with some other program.
Yeah. And really, even if you take a class, and you're taking the class because you're not 100% sure of how to do something, or you're not sure if you're doing it right, and by the end of that class, your response to that is, geez, that's what I was doing in the first place. That was a waste of time. You're not wasting your time because now you feel more confident in what you're doing.
Absolutely. I agree with that, Chris, 100%. Finally, you and I agree on something.
It's about time, isn't it?
And specializations, that's a good point to raise. Like if you're really interested in getting into information security or data recovery or certain kinds of processes that go really far in depth and are pretty specialized, it is good to get some advanced training. Like once you get to the point you're like, well, I've decided this is the direction I want to go, having some guidance from someone that's been in the trenches and knows what to do so you don't make the mistakes they've already made, that can pay off in dividends for the rest of your career.
Right.
Yep.
Absolutely.
And don't forget to go ahead and pimp the podcast network. If he wants to listen to podcasts, to go back and listen to all the computer repair podcasts, listen to some of the other shows. There's always tips in there from all of us, that stories we've gone through and things that have worked and things that have failed.
Absolutely. No, yeah, there's definitely knowledge is power, and I, you know, Chris, you brought up a great point of even when I'm learning something or when I've gone to a class and I go, well, I didn't really learn anything, but it makes me look at that and I go, okay, I'm doing something right. Kind of like when we went to CompTIA. I go, oh, I'm doing the same things that the $2 million guy is. So that's awesome.
I'm not screwing up.
And you get a certificate at the end of that class too, so you know that, you know.
Yeah. And really, you know, yes, and it'll tell you that you're doing the right thing. It'll tell you that you're not messing things up. But at the same time, the more confident you are in what you're doing, the faster you're going to do it. Right. So, you know, if going to that class and spending however much, let's say $500, you spend $500 and you go to a class to learn something and you find out, hey, I've already learned it. But if that takes 15 minutes off of the time that you're spending on each and every one of those jobs, how long is it going to take for those 15 minutes to add up to the $500 that you spent on that class?
Right, exactly. And not only that, if you're running a legit business and paying your taxes, it's a tax write-off.
That sure is.
So, hey, Matt, how about you?
What?
How would you get started in this business if you had to do over, I guess?
Okay, so the way I first got started was I got a job as an intern somewhere.
Okay.
And they would give me old broken computers or old computers. I would take home and test them by myself. Okay. I had a big table full of junk computers that I would learn on my own, networking, hardware repair, reinstall Windows. So I just got a bunch of old computers from my job. Okay. Now, I might have bought a few before I got that job on eBay or somewhere real cheap, you know, very cheap computers, $10, $20, $30. They weren't much. So, but I personally didn't learn anything in any class that I took.
Okay.
I found it much more advantageous to do it myself. I mean, I bought books, but I would do hands-on with my own stuff in my own place. That's how I learned better. And then the job I got, I learned on the job as well.
Right.
And I think Matt's making a really good point that we all learn differently. We're all going to have a different approach that's really going to work best for how we're going to take in the information durably and be able to put it into practice.
Right, exactly. Very good. All right, well, I will say that we had we got through 3 emails, so that was good, and had a good discussion from everybody on that and some of the things that hopefully that will help you guys out. I think we're going to go ahead and end off the show, and I'll say, Alex, appreciate you coming out. How can people get in touch with you if they want to maybe just ask you a question or something?
Sure, yeah, we can help all kinds of different businesses. Even if you're in IT or computer repair, we can help with more difficult situations like data recoveries or Linux servers or web development or some of the more nitty-gritty IT stuff. And on the little bar down here, there's our website, investment.com. You can visit us there and get in touch on the contact page or give us a call at 800-487-9404.
Absolutely great. Okay, and Marvin, Man in the Van, where can people reach you at?
Well, maninthevan.net will be up shortly. But until then, you can go to mbsystems.net. You can find me MB Systems Inc. in Google, Marvin Bee in Google somewhere. I don't know.
You're around, right?
I'm around. Yeah.
Marvin gets around. Is that what we're saying?
I get a van. I'm always on the move. You know?
And Matt, if people want to find you, where could they find you at?
Best place is over at informedit.net or email info@informedit.net. Check out the forums. They're not lazy. They're just a time saver.
There you go.
Be lazy if you use them.
There you go.
Just be able to maximize your efficiency with the forms. And if you like the forms and buy them, use promo code Podnutz for 25% off as well.
Very nice.
Awesome. Thank you. And yeah, we'll have a link to that in the show notes also. And then Chris, go ahead and let people know where they can find you.
Sure, yeah. So you can call us, 866-568-2813. You can email us at info@rstechteam.com, or you can visit our website at www.rstechteam.com. I'm also going to suggest that people sign up for our newsletter. We've had a number of different announcements going out on our newsletters for different changes that we've made, and as of 4.5 minutes ago, my server administrator has let us know that we can now send out mail notifications for our managed service plan customers. So you guys know before my customers do, and that email will be going out shortly today.
Nice. Awesome. Yeah, we'll have a link for that for the newsletter in the show notes also. You guys can get there's always good information, even if you're not using Chris's services. He's got some good information that, he talks about some interesting things sometimes. So appreciate everybody coming out and sharing. Yes?
Where can people find you?
Where can people find me? I don't know. On this show, every Sunday.
He kind of lives here.
There you go.
We do Podnutz, the Computer Repair Podcast, every Sunday at 4 p.m. Eastern over at podnutz.com/live. We would love it if you guys would watch and join in on the conversation by hanging out in the chat room or calling in live. A lot of people in the chat room are talking back and forth and sharing links and stuff like that. You guys can get on time information that you can use today. We have on-demand audio and video, always available after the fact over at podnutz.com and my YouTube channel, Podnutz Live Show for Computer Repair Techs. You guys can also find me on the Google Plus at Jeffery Halash or Twitter at TechNutPC. And if you're a computer repair tech and would like to be a guest on Podnutz Daily where you can talk about your business, send us an email to podnutzdaily@podnutz.com. You guys can also email questions and feedback for this show over to podnutz@podnutz.com. You guys can also leave a voicemail or call in the show. It's the same number as 1-888-697-0162. Program that in your phone, and even if you're out and about, you can give us a call as long as you have a decent cell phone connection and, ask us a question. You guys can leave us a rating and review over on iTunes. That would help more people know about us. You guys can also help support the Podnutz Network next time you're shopping at Amazon. Go to podnutz.com/Amazon. And I want to thank everyone for listening and subscribing to the show. We'll see you next time on Podnutz, the Computer Repair Podcast. Are you dancing?
We all are. It's not just me.
Yes.
One day, Jeff, you will dance.
That's right. We'll get you there.
Oh, you don't want to see me dance.
No, we do, because it's a progressive thing. The solid state drive was step one. And then what was the next step after that?
Dancing?
And then dancing the next one? He did something else to you, I thought. Hey, there he goes.
We could do a little
we got him shirts.
Get the sprinkler going. Why not? Do the lawnmower.
I don't know the lawnmower. What's a lawnmower?
You pull the cord, you walk the
start a lawnmower.
There's nothing.
Come on, the lawnmower, and the running man.
There you go.
If I do the running man, I'm going to pull my headphones out, so I can't do that.
Here's the real question: can you do the lawnmower while you're doing the running man?
Yeah,
that takes some skill.
Even I don't do that, Chris.
No. Sorry, Marvin. I've taken it too far.
Yes, you have. All right, well, guys, I have to. I'm gonna have to cut it short this week. I have my parents here from the sunny state of Florida, and they're enjoying the.
Not so sunny weather.
But they went there. They thought Erica was going to be a hurricane, so they left.
No, you know what's funny? We were actually sitting in a restaurant a couple nights ago, and they didn't even realize that all that stuff was going on down there. They're like, because they had just left before all that happened. They were like, "What happened?"
And apparently they missed nothing.
Yeah, missed nothing.
So yeah, I heard that died down. But anyways, appreciate you guys all coming out and sharing with us. We'll be here next Sunday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So have a great week.
Good show. Thanks for having me.
No problem.